The next item is the custom solar power purchase agreement. Dr. Pilch, we chatted about this a little bit during our executive session, and so we've sharpened our pencils perhaps, but please give us an introduction to this topic.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. And I've actually received a little bit additional information via email since that exec session, which I'll share now too as well. But what you have before you is a proposed contract for solar at Prairie Heights Middle School. And we actually began exploring the possibility of solar panels and solar energy in District 6 in August of 2014, prior to my coming to the district. So former interim superintendent Wayne Eads had tasked the staff with looking into solar possibilities throughout the district. And we worked with a co-op through a group of other school districts and another county to come to the decision to offer a possible contract with Custom Solar LLC, who then contracts with another company in order to actually provide the energy for us. This is part, we would be pursuing this at Prairie Heights Middle School in an effort to attain LEED Gold certification at Prairie Heights Middle School. So the new information I've received since we visited earlier is that all BEST, we received BEST grant dollars to help build Prairie Heights Middle School. All BEST projects shall target LEED Gold certification. So we shall target LEED Gold certification according to the guidelines for BEST, knowing that it's very difficult to achieve LEED Gold certification, and that all schools that are built with BEST dollars may or may not be able to do that. And quite frankly, even with the solar panels, we still might not achieve it. However, without the solar panels, it's pretty likely that we won't achieve the LEED Gold certification. We are right at the number of points needed right now, and chances are that when the company comes in to actually certify us or determine our certification, we would lose a few more points at that point. So what you have before you is really a solar agreement and a power purchase agreement that we're asking you to consider. It is a 20-year contract with the option to end the contract in 10 years. Over the 20 years, Custom Solar does predict that we would see a savings of about $500,000. I want to be really clear that I'm not promising a savings of $500,000, but I again conferred with staff prior to this business meeting that there is no indication that we would lose money as a result of entering into this contract. And hopefully we would actually save some money as a result of this contract. So I think at that I will open it back up to you, Mr. DeWitt, and I do have staff available too if that is helpful. I know we spent the better part of over an hour on this earlier this evening, so we've had a lot of discussion about it, and I know you don't take this significant decision lightly.
Yes, we had the opportunity to get some legal guidance as well. It's a contract that we wanted to very carefully review, so I appreciate the update on this information about the certification through BEST projects. That'll be of value to the entire board. This is an action item, and I'd be glad to accept a motion at this time before we discuss further.
I move that the Board of Education of Volta County School District 6 authorize the superintendent, our chief financial officer, to execute the custom solar power purchase agreement in substantially the form presented, subject to any further non-material modifications approved by the district legal counsel, and further authorize the superintendent or chief financial officer to execute all other agreements, instruments, and documents contemplated or required to complete the transaction, subject to approval as to form by the district's legal counsel, and to take all other action on behalf of the district as may be deemed necessary to complete the transaction.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll be glad to hear comment from board members at this time. Dr. Richard, you're lit up already. Would you like to speak?
I think I was still lit up from
It's
before.
a little ghost action here.
Could we just ask a question? Dr. Pilch had mentioned that over the term of the lease that we're probably anticipating around $500,000 in savings. Could we have an explanation of how that was calculated?
Mr. Johnson?
Brad, welcome up. Thank you, sir. Was that the short straw that I saw going on there? Welcome and thank you.
Good evening. How it was calculated was they were figuring on the utilities that we had used at John Evans over the last year that we were at John Evans. We used that for our model. I'm pulling a blank. I really am. Help. Help.
Well, and let me help for a moment. So when I look at the full proposal, there is a calculation that has been provided based on their previous experience that if you have utilized this amount of energy, you would likely continue to utilize this energy, and what would the savings be by utilizing solar? So Mandy,
correct.
what would you add to that?
And it's based on current rates, so we obviously can't predict rates 20 years from now. So it's based on the current rates and the projections that they've studied based on historical information for the last 10 years.
So the actual payment that we would make for the solar energy would be less than what we would purchase it for from Excel non-solar.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Again, we've spent an hour chatting about this, so we'll wait a minute to see other people may have a comment to make. Mr. Hall.
Well, I'm probably the reason we spent an hour
Darn it.
talking about this. But, so did you take into account the 90% production rate and then the additional 10% that has to be purchased from Excel to meet the 100% needs?
We did. To be honest, we gleaned the information from Custom Solar. They are the experts in this area, or this arena.
Okay.
And so I'm definitely counting on them to provide that feedback and that information.
Okay. I don't think this is not a bad deal necessarily for the district, but I don't think it's a good deal either. We could do much better. First of all, I don't think we need to worry about paying, sorry about that, my pen. The bottom line is we're paying money to put profit in investors' pockets that are financing this, that we could have for ourselves and multiply. Now, part of that is we have to come up with the capital cost to do it,
Correct.
obviously.
Correct.
So I look at this very much in relationship to our investment that we made in our food services division when we expanded the ability to grow our own vegetables and grow all our fresh fruit and do this and do that. It's a payback method, and it's a dollar return that we can control. We can't control this. We don't have any control over it. So I appreciate all the work that you've put into it. But the way the contract is structured, I think we'll be doing good to see that excess, personally, based off of previous history in electrical rates. It's just my opinion. But it's, as I said earlier in our work session, this is a very good contract for the solar people. This is a very good contract for the investors. It's an okay deal for us, in my opinion. So I can't support it.
Thanks, Mr. Hall. Other comments, board members? Dr. Richard?
about that.
No, thank you, sir. Oh,
Should I start? So I will be voting to support this. We have the opportunity to perhaps save up to $500,000. But we also know that we could break even or even save $1. So I guess from that standpoint, being able to potentially save taxpayer money is an incentive for voting for this. The other part is also we have an opportunity to diversify the energy sources that our students are using. And in fact, at that school, we have an incredible learning opportunity for our students to learn more about solar energy and have right on tap a chance to understand how that works. So it's a real life learning lab that is actually placed there. So for me, it's a win financially, and it's a win for our students.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Hafley.
The way I understand it, you said that we're trying to be a LEED Gold. Is that correct? How does that benefit the district other than the actual designation? Is there something else we garner from that? An attaboy, attagirl, what?
It's primarily recognition, Mr. Hafley. So, it is something we can use in materials that we share about our buildings. It is something that the architects and engineers can use in their materials. It will give District 6 and the Greeley-Evans School District some additional recognition. I mean, the schools that are LEED Gold certified are recognized, they're visited, people are paying attention to what did you do to get there. So it's an honor that will cause some groups to talk about us in favorable ways around having achieved that. But there's no additional funding, there's no additional, does that make sense?
Thank you. Mr. Lydiak.
I'll just add a little bit to that, though. In having worked with the BEST board and helping to, apply for the BEST grant that did build Prairie Heights, all those things kind of weigh in well later on when we do say go back for another ask.
Right.
Again, they hope that, we are very prudent with those BEST dollars and that we, follow through with our commitment and what we had committed to do. And so that will weigh well. I mean, there's no guarantee BEST will be around in each year moving forward, but it is for now, and it's got a funding source, but we won't go into that. What I did want to touch on, though, is that, I do appreciate that this contract was well vetted and that the district was well guarded in the contract. And if Dr. Pilch wouldn't mind, I would also like to, touch on the two aspects in and around the fact that, we've got Tabor protection clause in there so that we are compliant, and we also have the area land use cover. So can you touch on that?
Well, sure I can. And so the Tabor clause basically means that we cannot be required to actually obligate district dollars beyond our current spending, and that's why the 10-year limit is on the contract, even though solar companies really prefer the 20-year contract. Mandy, anything you want to add to that piece?
Well,
I don't think so.
there was the Section 2C as well.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead, Mr. Lydiak.
Just
Great.
Just for the record, there was the fund availability clause, notwithstanding anything in this agreement to the contract, financial obligations of the purchaser payable after the current fiscal year are contingent upon funds for that purpose being appropriated, budgeted, and otherwise made available. In the event funds are not appropriated, budgeted, or otherwise made available, the agreement shall be terminated by the last day of the period for which funds were appropriated.
So-
Our money's made.
What this really does for us is if for some reason there should be some unanticipated costs that would come in relation to this that we had not budgeted for, we have the out in this language is basically why you're pleased to see that language, I think, Mr. Lydiak. The other thing that I would add, Mr. DeWitt, around the conversation about BEST is that we have done everything we can within our existing dollars, within the bond issue dollars we raised and within the BEST dollars that we received. We've done everything we possibly could to obtain gold LEED certification. So if the board chooses to approve this contract and we go forward with the solar panels, it will be evident that the board took an additional step to actually in an effort to actually ensure that gold LEED certification, which will, when we go forward and hopefully ask for help with another new building in the future, we will talk about that and about that commitment.
Ms. Elise?
So first of all, I want to really say thank you to Steve. His knowledge around contracts is just amazing, and I appreciate being in the conversation and just, I know when his pen is clicking or his glasses are in his mouth, I need to really pay attention because he's going to tell me something really important. So thank you for all of that work. I am going to support this. I think it's not only prudent to what we've already committed ourselves to do with Prairie Heights and the bond issue and receiving the best grant, but I also acknowledge the comparison to our food structure that we have going on within the district and that kind of maintaining itself. I don't know if as a district we really want to be in the solar energy department, and coming up with that front capital to really even get that going, I think is kind of a challenge. So I do see this as a win-win, not as much as we would like, and probably not as much as we would like if we had the capital to do our own. But I do think this is the best scenario for us at this point.
Well, something that was said earlier was that we had originally looked to expand solar possibilities in a number of our schools, and a number of our schools need new roofs. And that's not going to happen automatically. And so putting a set of units on the roof of a school that in 3 years or 5 years ago needed a new roof is contrary to logic and is simply not something we can do. This is a setting in which we have, literally from the ground up, the opportunity to see the possibility of solar being instrumental. It raises the question, perhaps in future, that when we and if we do roofs, perhaps we would take a look at the possibility of seeing a variation on the theme of an approach towards solar, even in district. So this raises a whole set of questions and possibilities for me, which I think is very positive. The other thing I'd like to I guess, support is the idea that we've done everything but sign on a promise that we would go to this step for gold certification, and made some public statements as a district that this is something we had in mind. I'd like to be able to come to the state of Colorado in the near date and say we've got a need. We've been fulfilling our obligations. Here's our application, and I think we would at least have an opportunity to be considered. We may not be quite so welcome if we hadn't fulfilled our obligation under those circumstances. I have a stupid question, which maybe there's no one in the room capable of responding to, but I'll ask it anyway. Will there be signage on this solar array? Will it say so-and-so company all over the place, or have we got some limits as to what kind of advertising is going to go? Would the advertisement conform to Evans sign code, for instance? Have we worried about that?
Yeah, any signage would have to go through the city of Evans for approval, but there's been no conversation with Custom Solar about putting their name on it or anything like that, but I think that wouldn't hurt.
Well, and I think we have an obligation to our partners in Evans to make sure that we haven't hinted that we might forego their regulations as a sign code exists. So for what it's worth, I guess that's the only other thing I had in mind. Mr. Hall.
Never mind. No.
Okay. Last word for comments. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, Ms. Brea.
Mr. DeWitt?
I'm voting aye.
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Mr. Lydiak?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Dr. Richard?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-1.
Well, we thank one another for a busy year. Those of you at home may not know, this is a moment in which the school board hides under a rock for a month while we permit all of our employees of Dr. Pilch to get things done. We will meet again in August, but we certainly thank the staff for all the work that they've done to serve and support us this year. And I certainly want to thank the volunteers to the community to my right and to my left who serve on the school board. And this concludes this meeting. We are adjourned.